Hey, Alison, digging through the details, your first take.
Well, so the first take, trading better than expected. So that's continues a string of positive surprises sort of across the board. FICC, they were up against tough comp. They grew FICC 9%. Equities up 27%. So that's not as big as some of the gains we saw at some others. But keep in mind that Morgan Stanley is the biggest. But one thing I will point out, obviously this is a blowout quarter across the board from what we've seen so far. But Goldman Sachs, there's sort of a lot of nitpicking. They've been losing share in FICC and underperforming, but their equity is also a sizable business, perhaps doing better this quarter. And again, when we look at these numbers, we do have to think about mix, right? Especially for the FICC business. If we think about some of the puts and takes, Bank of America, quote, losing share in FICC this quarter, but that's really the credit focus of that business.
Right, so that was my question, is when the story was JP Morgan and Citi was how investment banking and FICC weren't doing well. Is Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs stealing market share, or is this just a different business mix that we're into?
Well, one of the things that we're watching in the quarter is the equities business and the market share trends, and it does look like maybe some of the leaders could be gaining share in that business. So the MiFID II reforms that took effect early in the year basically are expected to consolidate some of the share within the equity research business and research trading commissions at some of the top companies. And that could be what we're seeing. So we haven't gotten results from some of the smaller companies, but that could be the trend. JP Morgan talked about it. They said early on that might be something that's happening. That's something that Morgan Stanley and Goldman have talked about. So perhaps gaining share in the equities, cash equities business, equity derivatives, very strong across all the companies. And then within FICC, I think you have to keep in mind that the rates business does tend to be the biggest business. That tends to be the business where JP Morgan, Bank of America, more of the traditional banks are strong. In terms of the year-over-year trends, we are seeing the biggest gain at Morgan Stanley and Goldman.